The flibbery snozzle frapped a quiggle and is snoozling the quiglet. What did you understand from this sentence? Despite the fact that not a single noun is real, I bet you still understood quite a lot. And if this sentence were a description for an illustration or an image, then we'd be able to clearly identify who's the snozzle, who's the quiggle, and that the quiglet is actually being snoozled. All of this information is encoded in the phrase through grammar. But is it possible to have no grammar at all? Did you know that grammar reflects the culture and the history of its speakers? And that learning grammar could actually make language learning easier? Yeah, kind of like finding out that eating cake could be part of a diet. Hello, my dear polyglots. This is Niki, and you are on Natural Language. And today we are talking grammar. But before we dive in, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And let's get started. Grammar in every language evolves and changes over time. You might think the more speakers a language has, the more complex it becomes, but in reality it's quite the opposite. Closed or isolated communities tend to develop more complex grammatical structures over time. Languages spoken in isolated communities like Icelandic, Basque, or many tribal languages tend to retain intricate grammatical features. Meanwhile, widely spoken languages tend to simplify over time. As a result, we have a full spectrum of languages, from grammar-light ones like Mandarin Chinese with no verb conjugations, no tenses, and no grammatical gender, to polysynthetic languages like Navajo, where an entire sentence could be expressed in a single word. But let's take a look at what kind of information could be encoded through grammar. Let's go back to our original sentence. The flibbery snozzle frapped a quiggle and is snoozling the quiglet. From this, we can infer flibbery is likely describing the snozzle. Frapped happened in the past tense. The snozzle affected the quiggle. Snoozling is happening right now, affecting the quiglet. The quiglet is likely a smaller version of a quiggle. And the snoozling seems natural to snozzle since they share the same root. But if your language contains a gender system, like many Romance or most Slavic languages, you could also infer the gender of each character in the scene. In other languages like Basque, you could also tell whether the characters are animate or not, meaning are they living beings or are they objects? But why stop there? In Tuyuka, a language with over 50 genders, grammar also encodes shape, material, function, and more. So just by saying the snozzle frapped, you could tell if the snozzle is round, flat, flexible, and whether or not it's animate. If your language has a feature called evidentiality, then our sentence would not only describe what happened in the scene, but also how the speaker knows it happened. The sentence would encode whether the speaker saw it themselves, heard it from someone else, deduced it from evidence, or is just making a guess without proof. And in some languages, this isn't even optional, it's mandatory. In Tuyuka, the language we mentioned earlier, and in many other Amazonian languages, the speakers are required to include their source of information at all times. In these languages, just from grammar alone, you could tell exactly what kind of evidence the speaker has. But evidentiality is just one of the many fascinating linguistic features. There are a lot of interesting ways in which languages encode meaning, and we're going to discover them in an upcoming video. And what kind of interesting or uncommon features does your native language have? Let us know in the comment section below. So just like you can feel the general meaning of a sentence in milliseconds, the native speakers of these languages can feel these additional nuances like evidentiality, gender, etc. intuitively without even thinking about it. But what exactly is this feeling of grammatical structure? And why is it so easy for you to do it in your native language? And how do you develop it in your target language? We humans are the speaking animal. Speech defines our species. And so, we have evolved a special brain region which processes grammar, called Broca's area. And how do we know Broca's area is responsible for grammar? Well, like many other brain insights, we have studied unfortunate patients who suffered injuries or blood flow impairments in this region. The condition is called Broca's aphasia. Patients suffering from aphasia, instead of saying, I'm going to the store to buy some apples, might say something like, go store, buy apple. The meaning's still there, but the grammar is absent. These patients don't have any issues with comprehension or other cognitive functions. What's even more fascinating is that if presented with a sentence on paper, they could still recognize the grammatical errors, even though they can't produce a grammatically sound sentence out loud. This tells us that producing grammatically sound speech and textbook-like grammar analysis are two different skills. So being really good at filling in grammar puzzles doesn't necessarily make you fluent in a language. We take a deeper dive into how your brain processes language in the linked video. But how to rewire your brain for a foreign language? Research indicates that high proficiency foreign language speakers activate Broca's area in a way similar to native speakers. This means they have developed the same sense of intuitive and immediate correctness of the target language. And how do they achieve this? Through massive input and output. You need to listen a lot and you need to speak a lot to build fluency. Endless grammar drills won't get you there, but real communication will rewire your brain to think in the target language and develop an intuitive sense of grammar. As we've seen, your grammar intuition allows you to deduce meaning even if you know 0 words in a sentence. But what if you already know most of the words and must guess only 1? Well, in that case, the unknown word might become obvious based on context. And in a conversation or while watching a movie, you might not even notice an unknown word, yet still understand its meaning without any conscious effort. This process, known as incidental vocabulary acquisition, is how babies learn most of their vocabulary. And of course, some words are learned by pointing at objects and asking for their names, while more complex concepts are explained deductively by adults. But most vocabulary acquisition in native language happens incidentally. You infer the meaning of the words from how they're used. And by putting a grammatical framework on top of vocabulary, grammar makes this process much easier. So, to wrap up, every time the subjunctive mood or the accusative case drives you crazy, remind yourself that grammar exists to help you, not to frustrate you. All you need to do is relax, focus on input and speech, embrace repetition, and trust the process. Let your brain rewire itself until the foreign language starts to feel natural. And remember, repetition leads to automation. And now I want to hear from you. Which grammar rules do you find the hardest in your target language? Let me know in the comment section below. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.